They were going to turn her into a boy. As a boy, you'll be able to move in and out of the market, buy what we need, and no one will stop you, Mother said. It's a perfect solution, Mrs. Wera said. You'll be our cousin from Jalalabad, Nuria said. Come to stay with us while our father is away. Parvana stared at the three of them. It was as though they were speaking a foreign language, and she didn't have a clue what they were saying. If anybody asks about you, we'll say that you have gone to stay with an aunt in Kunduz, Mother said. But no one will ask about you. At these words, Parvana turned her head sharply to glare at her sister. If ever there was a time to say something mean, this was it, but she couldn't think of anything. After all, what Nuria said was true. None of her friends had seen her since the Taliban closed the schools. Her relatives were scattered to different parts of the country, even to different countries. There was no one to ask about her. You'll wear Hussein's clothes. Mother's voice caught, and for a moment it seemed as though she would cry, but she got control of herself again. They will be a bit big for you, but we can make some adjustments if we have to. She glanced over at Mrs. Wera. Those clothes have been idle long enough. It's time they were put to use. Parvana guessed Mrs. Wera and her mother had been talking long and hard while she was asleep. She was glad of that. Her mother already looked better, but that didn't mean she was ready to give in. It won't work, she said. I won't look like a boy. I have long hair. Nuria opened the cupboard door, took out the sewing kit, and slowly opened it up. It looked to Parvana as if Nuria was having too much fun, as she lifted out the scissors and snapped them open and shut a few times. You're not cutting my hair. Parvana's hands flew up to her head. How else will you look like a boy? Mother asked. Cut Nuria's hair. She's the oldest. It's her responsibility to look after me, not my responsibility to look after her. No one would believe me to be a boy, Nuria said calmly, looking down at her body. Nuria being calm just made Parvana madder. I'll look like that soon, Parvana said. You wish. We'll deal with that when the time comes, Mother said quickly, heading off the fight she knew was coming. Until then, we have no choice. Someone has to be able to go outside, and you are the one most likely to look like a boy. Parvana thought about it. Her fingers reached up her back to see how long her hair had grown. It has to be your decision, Mrs. Wera said. We can force you to cut off your hair, but you're still the one who has to go outside and act the part. We know this is a big thing we're asking, but I think you can do it. How about it? Parvana realized Mrs. Wera was right. They could hold her down and cut off her hair, but for anything more, they needed her cooperation. In the end, it really was her decision. Somehow, knowing that made it easier to agree. All right, she said. I'll do it. Well done, said Mrs. Wera. That's the spirit. Nuria snapped the scissors again. I'll cut your hair, she said. I'll cut it, Mother said, taking the scissors away. Let's do it now, Parvana. Thinking about it won't make it any easier. Parvana and her mother went into the washroom, where the cement floor would make it easier to clean up the cut-off hair. Mother took Hussein's clothes in with them. Do you want to watch? Mother asked, nodding toward the mirror. Parvana shook her head, then changed her mind. If this was the last she would see of her hair, then she wanted to see it for as long as she could. Mother worked quickly. First, she cut off a huge chunk in a straight line at her neck. She held it up for Parvana to see. I have a lovely piece of ribbon packed away, she said. We'll tie this up with it, and you can keep it. Parvana looked at the hair in her mother's hand. While it was on her head, it had seemed important. It didn't seem important anymore. No thanks, said Parvana. Throw it away. Her mother's lips tightened. If you're going to sulk about it, she said, and she tossed the hair down to the floor. As more and more hair fell away, Parvana began to feel like a different person. Her whole face showed. What was left of her hair was short and shaggy. It curled in a soft fringe around her ears. There were no long parts to fall into her eyes, to become tangled on a windy day.